If Rodri's the same age as Declan Rice, he's 160 million.
Okay. There's a variety of reasons why this one is interesting.
So through the strop of all strops.
That is the understatement of all understatements, isn't it?
Exactly. I wrote that in enormous capitals in my notes.
But as soon as Real Madrid come to the table, it's kind of like, oh, it's Real Madrid.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Transfers Exposed. I'm Will Pugh. That right there is the Sun's Deputy Head of Sport, Dean Scoggins. And we are here bringing you your exclusive press pass to the hottest transfer stories throughout the entire summer.
Yep, that's right, Will. We will be here every Tuesday and Thursday, right through until September the 1st, when that transfer window slams shut, bringing you all of those biggest and hottest deals.
Exactly, Dino. And on Tuesday's show, which did extremely well, by the way, Chelsea fans loving the Xavi Simons story that we broke down so well. You said the phones are now hot in the transfer market and the deals are starting to be done. That is exactly what has happened. Marcus Rashford here. It's almost like you predicted it, Dino. Stepping out of a London phone box after his deal to Barcelona was confirmed, even though he's from Manchester.
I don't think they're strictly just London phone boxes, but, you know, London-centric you will think that maybe.
Well,
but,
quite. Yeah, sorry. Rashford's loan to Barcelona, done. Hugo Ekitike to Liverpool, done. But we are going to have a look, Dino, at some more deals that have not been done yet. And there's only one place to start, is there not?
Yeah, back page lead on The Sun this morning. We'll start with that. Mad on Rod. Great story from Martin Lipton. And it's City bracing themselves for a £100 million offer from Real Madrid for Rodri. Now, there's a variety of reasons why this one is interesting, not least the Ballon d'Or strop fest of Real Madrid when Rodri won the Ballon d'Or. But yeah, obviously, new Real Madrid manager, Xabi Alonso, making the Spain midfielder his top target, Martin tells us. 29 now, Rodri, which seems to have crept up on us a little bit.
That's all of a sudden, given this new PSR stuff, become ancient, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very, very odd. But yeah, obviously won the Ballon d'Or last year, and it's no real statement to say that if Rodri had been fit for the whole of last season, Man City would have been in the title race.
Yeah,
absolutely. That makes this an extremely interesting story.
Yep.
Especially given the amount of spend City have done in this transfer window.
Absolutely. Well, look, I was at that Ballon d'Or ceremony back in
in your very nice
that was
October, was it?
It was extremely nice. I think it was October. Yeah, I just remember it being very cold. Me and Jim White battling our way through the Parisian streets trying to find the media entrance to the Ballon d'Or, but. It was one of those things, right? I was going along very, very excited. A wonderful event, great thing to be at, covering it for Sun Sport, of course. But you kind of expected it to be a go through the motions thing. Sit and watch the ceremony, do your best to try and get a word with some of the world's biggest and best football stars who were arriving, and just have a thoroughly enjoyable evening, file some copy, bring, of course, one of the biggest events of the year to our readers and viewers. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was this huge story that erupted, which was the whisper had got out that Rodri, in my opinion, by the way, was 100% deservedly going to pick up the gong. Real Madrid had got word of that, and that Vinicius wasn't going to win it. So threw the strop of all strops and decided to boycott the event, which I described at the time as absolutely pathetic. I still feel exactly the same now. We'll go on to that in a little while, and whether or not Rodri may or may not have felt disrespected at the time by Real Madrid's actions, and whether he'd want to join a club like that. But let's just sort of break down some of the thoughts and thinking and feelings behind the move first. Xabi Alonso, this is quite a recent sort of change in stance from him, right? Real Madrid were thrashed 4-0 by PSG at the Club World Cup.
And looked worse than that, by the way.
Exactly.
They were terrible.
Yep. And basically, the wording in Martin's piece was Xabi Alonso was stunned at his midfield's fragility after Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha and João Neves bullied them, basically. Now, it feels like quite a blessed position to be in, I suppose. If you're manager of Real Madrid and your midfield have quite a bad game, then you go, well, I want the best midfielder in the world. Yeah. Actually, nay, the best player in the world then.
Yeah, and that is Real Madrid all over, isn't it? And that's what makes this one so interesting. If this was any other club in world football, Manchester City would be extremely confident that Rodri's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But as soon as Real Madrid come to the table, it's kind of like, oh, it's Real Madrid.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very similar with Kylian Mbappe, wasn't it? You know, you think that's going to be the case. And look, they've lost Luka Modrić. Obviously, age is, you know, he's now gone to AC Milan. Toni Kroos obviously come to the end of career as well. You know, they've got some interesting decisions to make around the likes of Tchouaméni. Is he the holding midfielder or is he a centre back?
Yeah.
And if you are Xabi Alonso and you're thinking, well, I need to bolster my midfield, then there's only one place to start, isn't there? Really?
Yeah.
And look, as Martin says in his piece, Pep is reluctant to lose his linchpin. I mean, that is the understatement of all understatements, isn't it?
Exactly. I wrote that in enormous capitals in my notes. Reluctant to lose the best player, not just the best midfielder in the world, the best player in the world. But Real Madrid, to be fair, they think they might be able to do it. One of the interesting pieces Martin writes is that Real Madrid's sense, given that Rodri's only got 2 years left on his deal, their sense is that, well, we don't think that City have got ultimate faith in Rodri's physical ability and that his body can hold up to the rigours of the Premier League, because if they did, they would have signed the world's best player to a new contract that extends beyond 2027, which is when his current deal runs to. Now, is there anything in that, or is that just a little bit cheeky by
I find
Real?
it a bit cheeky. I think that's probably the right phrase. I think, well, if you thought that Man City weren't that confident in his injury record and his current state of his body, would you really be paying 100 million, north of 100 million for him yourselves for a start?
But is £100 million for the world's best player with 2 years left on his deal? Feels like a bargain.
At 29, I think it's about right. You know, you think about the Declan Rice money.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what we're talking about. If you know, if
different
you were to
league of player though, aren't they?
Well,
they are a different league of player.
I think that he's a few percent above Declan Rice. But obviously
about 20.
Well, I think that's a bit harsh on Rice. I think, you know, Rice was.
I will say they are different players.
Yes,
though.
Yeah, they
he
are.
is like an out, dyed in the wool.
I actually think that Rice could play the Rodri role if instructed to.
I think it's where he's best at.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like to play that disciplined position.
If you think about, you take a few years off Rodri, then the fee would be 130, 140 million, and that's what Arsenal would value Rice at. So, you know, I don't think we're not in a different ballpark.
If Rodri's the same age as Declan Rice, he's 160 million.
Okay, fine.
Easy. Definitely. You can.
We can quibble over 10 or 20 million between friends.
Okay, fine.
But look, I just think that it might also be the case that this is the catalyst for Manchester City doing that new deal.
Yeah.
As well, you know.
Well, we've seen that a lot, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm not for a moment suggesting before the phone rings that the Rodri agents before the Rodri agents are trying to drum up something. Not at all. You know, obviously Xabi Alonso would want Rodri. You know, everyone would want Rodri. Let's do a scouting list of the best 5 holding midfield players in the world. Yeah. He's number 1 on the list. So absolutely, that's the case. But I actually just want to call up, and I'm not going to try and recall this myself, but the number of midfield players at Manchester City at the moment. Okay?
Yeah, go on.
So I'm not doing this off the top of my head. I'm going to read this from here. So Rodri, obviously, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Claudio Echeverri, Rayan Cherki, Tijani Reinders, Nico Gonzalez, Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan, Oscar Bob, James McAtee, Mateus Nunes (brackets fullback), Mateo Kovacic, Nico O'Reilly (brackets fullback), and Calvin Phillips. So
goodness me,
you know, so it's not
15.
Was that 15?
15.
Right? I lost count.
Yeah, I try to get my toes out.
Yeah, but it was. You know, that does mean that Man City have got some work to do in those areas. We've talked about McAtee in previous episodes. You know, and obviously Calvin Phillips is probably going to end up leaving this summer.
He's breaking into the first team.
Have they remembered he's there? Is one of the those things. But great player, by the way. Just feel a bit sorry for him how it's gone. It was a you know, an England player who was then downgraded afterwards, which is such a shame. And then the injuries came after that. I hope he goes back to Leeds and shows everyone what a good player he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they won't want to sell Rodri. But if Rodri comes in and says, "It's Real Madrid, I'd like to go, please," then, you know, we enter a different scenario.
Not to keep on harking back. Declan Rice is never winning the Ballon d'Or, by the way. But Rodri.
Well, that depends if you think Arsenal can win the Premier League and the Champions League. If Arsenal,
I don't. I don't think that.
No, but if Arsenal, if buts and maybes, obviously, but if Arsenal had got to the Champions League final and possibly won it last year, and then had won the Premier League, Declan Rice would be holding the Ballon d'Or in October. So but they didn't. So
if I was
fine,
six,
right.
if I was
Silly
6'3" and better looking, Dino, I wouldn't be sitting here opposite you. I'd be a model. With Real Madrid, obviously Rodri, born in Madrid, of course. City paid 62.5 million quid for Rodri 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. As I say, that's how that's crept up on us, and now he's 29. You know, but you forget those COVID years.
One thing, right? If Man City do let him go, we did quite an interesting show, one of my favourites of last year actually, on Nico Gonzalez on Tactics Exposed last season, which of course will be back next season. So don't forget, get your buttons ready on YouTube. We'll be back as ever from the start of the season. But Nico Gonzalez, and I watched one of his really early games against Newcastle at home. It was City were outstanding that day. It was one of the most enjoyable games I got to watch last season. He was imperious. And again, almost impossible to replace Rodri, but he's very much in that mould. The very similar frame, very disciplined in that position. Now, if he does go, Rodri, is it one of those where Man City maybe quietly would go, well, that's okay because I think we're covered?
I don't think they're ever going to say it's okay. You know, it's never okay to lose a player of that calibre. You know, it's a bit like when Harry Kane went to Bayern Munich. They're irreplaceable, those type of players, at that type of fee. But yeah, Nico Gonzalez, Pep referred to him as mini Rodri. You know, and I think if you go back, Marmoush is an exception to this in recent times. But if you go back over the last 2 or 3 years, all those Man City signings of the 50 to 80 million category come in, play a few games, show us what they're about, have a little dip, and then Pep gets into them, gets what he wants out of them, starts to develop them in a particular way, and then we see a sort of 2.0 version of that. Happened with Kyle Walker, happened with Guardiola. We saw that from Diaz.
So many.
Yeah, I mean, Grealish
players,
probably not that category, you know, and then obviously we had the highs and lows of Phil Foden, but if he can get
Bernardo Silva,
Bernardo Silva, absolutely, and you know, and Gundogan comes back again, you know, so there is that thing with Pep. So look, I'm no doubting Nico Gonzalez is absolute top quality, but you know, it's going to be so hard for any player to just say, I'll just be Rodri and fill those boots.
Quite. Well, Rodri obviously tore his ACL against Arsenal, that 2-2 draw at home in September, that was. And then, he did make a little bit of a comeback during the Club World Cup, didn't he? But fresh injury problems as well. So Man City fans, do let us know what you think in the comments. Would you be sad to see Rodri go? Of course you was. What a stupid thing to say. But for £100 million, given his age, given his fitness woes, would you quietly be okay with it? And is Nico Gonzalez the man to replace him? As always, get in the comments, let us know.